Tutorial on how to use crimp beads and how to make beaded jewelry. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Supplies: beading wire, crimp beads, crimp bead cover, crimp bead tool, wire cutters, round nose pliers, optional beads of your choice, jump rings, and clasp. Cut a long piece of beading wire off. You will need extra wire, so it's better to have too much than not enough. If you are using a crimp bead tool, your crimp beads have to be thick like the one on the left. It cannot be thin like the one on the right. If the crimp bead is too thin, your bead will break. Put your crimp bead on the wire. You can either put your lobster clasp on now, or do what I do and wait until my loop is formed and then use a jump ring. Either method is fine. Take the end of the wire and thread it through the crimp bead. It should look like this. You want the loop to be pretty small, but not too small. The crimp bead tool has two holes you are going to use. You will put the crimp bead in the first hole, then the second hole, then back to the first hole. Put the crimp bead in the first hole and squeeze the pliers tightly. Now put the bead in the second hole and squeeze tightly. This hole creates a line down the middle of the bead. Before you put the bead through the first hole again, you want to make sure the bead is facing vertically. The first hole is going to bend the bead in half to close it shut. It should look like this. Next step is putting your crimp bead cover on. This is the hardest part. Put the crimp cover in the tip of your crimp tool, then put your crimp bead into the cover and then squeeze the cover shut. It's okay if the crimp cover isn't closed evenly. As long as it's secured around the bead, that's all that matters. You should have a tail of a short piece of wire. You can either cut it or just put your beads over it. Just make sure it isn't poking out. Now just put your beads on. Once you are finished, you are going to repeat the previous steps to finish off the necklace. This is why having extra wire when you are finished is important. Not having a lot of wire when you are finished makes adding the crimp bead difficult. Trust me, lol. Once you thread the wire through the crimp bead, you are going to want to put the wire through some of the beads too. This is to hide the tail that will be left. Then use your crimp tool to secure the bead. Put the bead in the first hole, then second hole, then turn the bead vertically and put it back through the first hole to close it. Then put the crimp cover on. Cut off the extra wire and make sure the end is hidden in a bead so it's not poking out. Put your end pieces on and you are finished. I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them below.